We're excited to welcome you this evening to our special event, Drawing the Line, an evening with political cartoonists. Thanks for joining us in this important conversation, and thanks, of course, to our panel of award-winning cartoonists, Ann Telnaes, Steve Brodner, and Tom Tomorrow. If you're not already following them, I hope you will be by the end of the evening. A big thank you also to our moderator, Milo Vassallo, Executive Director of the Media and Democracy Project, one of our co-hosting organizations, along with Downtown Nasty Women Social Group, Team Men, Seniors Taking Action, and the Wednesday Group. Our 6 organizations are focused on preserving, strengthening, and fighting for democracy, each in our own way, but frequently we find ourselves collaborating and co-hosting events, such as tonight. We hope you'll also follow each one of us and join us for future events. And we hope that all of you will find and join one of the thousands of marches and events nationwide and actually worldwide next Saturday, March 28th, for the latest iteration of No Kings. Tonight's panel is particularly timely given the increasing attacks on the press by the current occupant of the White House, who has called journalists, quote, the enemy of the people, unquote, and just this week on Truth Social accused news organizations of lying about the Iran war and mused about charges for treason. Threats to the media in general are on the rise, but we're aware that political cartoonists who use their pens to skewer the powerful are under particular threat. Under pressure, a just-released report on threats to cartoonists around the world warned, amid the context of rising authoritarianism, the cases featured give a stark impression of the state of freedom of expression for cartoonists everywhere, including multiple warnings about the deterioration of conditions in the United States. When we came up with the title, Drawing the Line, we meant it both literally and figuratively, describing both the act of drawing, which of course our panelists do so well, but also drawing the line against infringement of the press, which our panelists fight every day. So this evening, we have the privilege and pleasure of hearing from 3 brilliant cartoonists about their creative process, what inspires them, and how they hold truth to power. We'll get to see some of their work, including images that they've generously donated so that we can download, print, and use them as protest signs at No Kings marches next weekend. With that, I'm excited to introduce you all to Milo Vassallo, the Executive Director of the Media and Democracy Project, and our moderator for the evening. Take it away, Milo.
Wow, Judy, thank you for the introduction and the essential context to this evening. It is wonderful to partner and collaborate with our host organizations across the board. And it is absolutely an honor and frankly a dream come true to have an opportunity to discuss with 3 legendary cartoonists the power of their work, and most importantly, to get their opinions of what this moment is and what we can all do. All the host organizations this evening are activist organizations. We're interested in engaging people in civic activism and engaging specifically in actions that support an aspirational democracy. So we're also going to have a section this evening to hear from our 3 panelists what their thoughts are, what we can do to both uplift their work and that of other editorial cartoonists and a free press, but also specifically around the issues of media and editorial cartoonists as a specific component of journalism. So thank you to Judy and our hosts, and of course, our panelists. I'm now tasked with the challenge of sharing with everyone some context and also to do a very unfortunately superficial overview of each of these incredible panelists. We're going to start briefly with a little context to where we are today, which is this is the first established or accepted political cartoon in the United States. This was Benjamin Franklin making a case in the 1750s that the colonies, the newfound states should unite and specifically join or die. In American history, there have been powerful editorial cartoonists. One of the more famous from the 1800s was Thomas Nast, who really used his power to communicate corruption of Tammany Hall. There's a famous Boss Tweed quote, something related to, famously said something to the effect of those damn pictures. If only people didn't see those damn pictures. Ultimately, a cartoonist was involved in the fall of a giant corrupt administration. This is another very important history participant in, figure in the history of editorial cartoonists, and that is Herb Block, or affectionately known as Herb Block. Herb Block was an absolute powerhouse of editorial cartoonists in the 20th century. He occupied a very powerful spot at the Washington Post, and for over 70 years was an editorial cartoonist. He was famous for during the Nixon administration for doing some powerful cartoons, but that's a picture of a Richard Nixon holding a piece of tape together, having spliced out, and this was some of the missing minutes of some of the Nixon tapes. That's Herb Block in the center. It sounds like all of these cartoonists today would certainly have a story of how he either inspired or a story of how they saw his work as an inspiration for their work. And I definitely think it would be a part of our session today to take home, think of this as a learning opportunity to further your knowledge and understanding of the power of editorial cartoonists and some of the predecessors of the people we're going to talk to tonight. So definitely read more about Herb Block. It's a wonderful website, the Herb Block Foundation. He's an absolute altruist and still continues to support editorial cartoonists with foundation work and scholarship. So please definitely familiarize yourself with Herb Block. Something else which is important and relevant to tonight's event is all three of the cartoonists joining us this evening are recipients of the Herb Block Award. We'll talk about them individually. I don't know if they define themselves by the class of year that they were the winners, but just for those of us outside the editorial cartoonist and the cartoon community, this is the most prestigious award to editorial cartoonists and cartoonists in general, and we are fortunate enough to have three of the winners of the Herb Block Award join us this evening. We are also going to ask the question of, do you follow any cartoonists on social media? Do you subscribe to any cartoonists' newsletters or Substacks or blogs? And also, do you have a favorite editorial cartoonist? Because one of the goals from this evening is to recognize that editorial cartoonists and cartoonists in general actually can be a very important and valuable part of your information diet. Complex times, it is helpful to have people that can help us process and understand events. It's not just about knowing what's happening, it's getting people who have insights. And all three of our panelists have had incredible insights and actually have been very prescient about the harms and hazards of the current administration and the threats to democracy across the board. I'm going to do my best to do a brief introduction for those who are not familiar with the three panelists. We're going to start right now very briefly by introducing all three. We'll just spend a few minutes initially so you can get a little bit of a sense of these wonderful creators and cartoonists. And then we're going to have a larger session in about 20 minutes or so. We'll invite all three of them to respond to a couple of topics, and hopefully they can even maybe engage each other and give us some insights in how they're thinking about some of the issues of the day. So we're going to start specifically by showing some of the cartoons of Telnaes. And we'll do that right now. So in terms of Anne's work, probably most folks on the call are somewhat familiar with one of her cartoons, but it'd be useful to kind of see a little bit more of the work for those who aren't. And Anne, I'll ask you to weigh in on one of these cartoons of your choosing, but I think this is a really powerful cartoon. This is an image of I think this is, maybe Anne, if you don't mind, maybe I'll have you describe this rather than me attempt to describe your work, if you can see it on your screen. So
Um,
welcome and thank you for being here.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me. It's great to see everyone. And this cartoon, I'm pretty sure I did for a Press Freedom Day. Um, of course, that's me at the desk. I always like to draw myself a little bit taller than I am. But yeah, it's just every year editorial cartoonists like to do cartoons to just remind people that, we have a Press Freedom Day. I think it's May 3rd, right? Is that right? Yeah.
Fifth. We'll
Fifth,
talk about
I'm
it, and it's
sorry,
the fifth.
fifth,
I
May
think if
5th.
this year, I think it's the fifth.
Okay, May 5th. So everyone just be aware of that. So that was a cartoon that I created, I believe, for one of those days.
So the next slide covers what has become one of the most famous Antanas cartoons, if not the most, and one of the most famous editorial cartoons in the last several years. And do you potentially want to speak to this one as well, since this has been received so well around the world?
Sure. Yeah, this is actually a rough. This was a rough that I created when I was still working at the Washington Post. Everybody has a different relationship with their editor. I basically the entire time I worked at the Washington Post, which was since 2008, I always chose my own topic. But I would have to show a rough to eventually the editorial page editor who made all the decisions about the finals and would have to get it approved. Now, just I want people to understand that, if you have an editor, you have to be edited. And, I was edited. I was sometimes told I needed to make something clearer, or, maybe an image made an editor uncomfortable, which seemed to happen a lot with this last editor. But I was never told I couldn't do a topic. And this was new. So the topic was, um, it was actually, there had been several stories in the Washington Post about this, where after Trump had been reelected, that all the billionaires went down to Mar-a-Lago, basically on bended knee, as I showed here, trying to curry favor with him. So I didn't really feel like this cartoon was particularly controversial. I was almost kind of illustrating what was actually going on. But it came back to me that no, we're not going to do that one. So that created an issue for me. I did not at that point plan on quitting the Washington Post. I wasn't incredibly excited that I had to go through another Trump term because I had already drawn him for 4 years. Frankly, was incredibly tired. But I just, I figured I was going to just have to hunker down and draw the next 4 years, because I honestly did think this term was going to be much more dangerous than his last. And when I was told I couldn't do this, I thought, well, that's a line for me, talking about drawing the line. And I decided I had to quit. So after a conversation with my editorial page editor, where he didn't convince me that there was any justification for killing it, I quit. So and then not knowing, I really didn't think anybody would notice, frankly, but I put up kind of a resignation letter on my Substack because, it wasn't like it wasn't like the Washington Post was going to like give me a goodbye party. So I just wanted to explain to my readership, and I wanted to explain to my colleagues why I was leaving the Washington Post. And for whatever reason, it went viral, not just in the United States, but around the world. Several countries, did stories about it. And as you said, it's probably my most famous cartoon. And of course, it's not the best drawn one I've ever done, but that's the way this works.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. I would share that adding to the what must have been weight on your shoulders of making that decision. It's only better understanding the editorial cartoonists and her block that you occupied what at the time that was the biggest potentially powerful editorial position in America. You're in
Right.
DC, you're at the Washington Post, you're filling her block shoes. And to leap, there was no leap up. There was no lateral move. You leapt
No,
into the abyss.
no. And I really did think that when I told them I was quitting, that was the end of my editorial cartooning career. It wasn't that I wouldn't stop drawing, but I'm just saying my career would have been over. So yeah, it was quite a year. And it wasn't something I decided on. I just want to say one thing. Steve Brodner, who you're going to be talking about soon, he was the first person to call me and said, "We have to organize. We have to like do something." I'm like, I'm sitting here with a glass of wine. I'm trying to figure out where I am, and you're sitting there and you want to organize. But he was great. He was wonderful to hear from.
That's wonderful to hear, and kudos to Steve and also the larger editorial and cartoonist community around the world. And we collected about 40 of the cartoons that other cartoonists did in the I Stand with Anne campaign. It was amazing to see the community rally, and some of these are incredible. And many of them are just, it's amazing to see the different skills and strategies and styles of people kind of riffing on your famous cartoon, it kind of had this ripple effect literally around the world. You could see cartoonists in other languages doing, some derivative with some text. So it had ripples. I'm glad Steve nudged you, and
Oh
of course
yes, Steve
you
was
did the
right
hard work,
there.
of course, of making the judge. But it's very cool that the community really rallied around you and didn't just leave you hanging.
But I do want to say we do that. I mean, when there's a cartoonist in trouble, around the world, we will all do cartoons for them and support. And we're a pretty small group. I mean, we don't know everyone personally, but we know of each other. And when somebody is in trouble, especially in this country, at least we still have our First Amendment rights, hopefully. But we have a lot of colleagues overseas that they get thrown into jail for what they draw and they disappear for what they draw. So, we're always trying to support one another.
That's wonderful to hear. And as I cannot summarize adequately your credentials and our other panelists, I will just highlight that Anne has not only been a Her Block winner, which is wonderful to emphasize this evening, but actually two-time Pulitzer winner for her work in 2021 and then again in 2025. So once again, incredible accolades and absolutely well deserved. And now we're going to we're going to hear more from Anne, assure folks. We're now going to go and talk to another one of our wonderful guests this evening and panelists, and that's Steve Brodner. Steve Brodner has been an illustrator, an editorial cartoonist, and has been doing this for several years and has many accolades. Has been published in many major magazines, has done covers across the board: Esquire, New York Times, Rolling Stone, Harper's, and so it's really tough to pick one or two cartoons, but I'll go through several of these, Steve, and then I'll ask you if there's one or two you want to talk about. But there's one that I do want to talk about that you didn't submit, but I think is important that highlights something specific that I'd like to touch on. So, Steve, welcome. Welcome,
Um,
Steve.
Thank you for all those nice comments, and I'm very honored to be here with my colleagues and all these people who are just uh, honoring us by being interested in what we do and liking what we do, because we do it alone in the dark, in the quiet, in the night, and if you do a really good job, nobody says it, nobody tells you. You just sort of go to bed. But
Well, you are loved, and your work is loved. So so
thank
so
you
thank you,
so
Steve.
much.
All right. So let's go through. You shared some of these cartoons, and once again,
Yeah.
it's been fascinating as I've spent more time, frankly, since Anne's resignation from the Washington Post. Myself and the Media Democracy Project have been very engaged in the importance of editorial cartoonists. We list every month a hero, someone relevant to what's going on in democracy, and two of our heroes of 2025 were editorial cartoonists. It was Adam Ziglis for getting basically death threats in the Buffalo News, canceling a fundraiser because he wrote a cartoon, somewhat, pointing the inconsistencies of Red America with regards to the federal government. But here's Steve's style. It's amazing to see your artists, your editors, your creators, and you're somewhat clairvoyant. And we'll talk about that when we talked about our group session. Is the three of you have the ability to see things before they happen, which is, I think, somewhat unique in terms of editorial kind of composition. So this is obviously a topical piece looking at our Health and Human Services Secretary recently describing. I don't know if you want to describe your inspiration here, Steve.
Well, went with a comment he made about he's not afraid of germs. He's accustomed to sniffing cocaine off the tops of toilet bowls. So that ought to give you some confidence in our Secretary of Health and Human Services. So what happened here was what you're really hoping to do with a cartoon is to find the the right form for the idea. And it just occurred to me that, New Yorker had had its anniversary cover recently in February, as they always do. And I thought, yes, let's turn him into Eustace Tilley, sniffing instead of examining a little butterfly, he's in a top hat and he's examining one of his little favorite germs that he's sniffing through a rolled up $100 bill.
Fantastic. I'm now going to go through just we're going to come back once again to our to Anne and we're going to get to Tom momentarily.
Yeah.
But you've been very clear recognizing authoritarianism, fascism, the danger of the moment, and you've
Yeah.
captured that. It's obviously as an editorial cartoonist, you all have a range of serious, lighthearted, but the moment clearly meets, it is a dangerous moment. It's a
Well,
frightening moment, and here
I
you
find
have
myself illustrating events and finding similes and parables and this just hit me. This quote by Joe Klein, who's not my favorite commentator. He's kind of a Giuliani Democrat from Queens, but the quote was so good. And it felt like the perfect 30,000 feet assessment of where Trump is right now. And it's very important for all of us to know that all this noise that we're surrounded by, he is failing and he is flailing. And, you know, bombing Iran is not helping him escape Epstein. And then bombing Cuba will not help him escape Iran. So everything he's doing is the exact opposite of what any intelligent person would do if he wanted to save himself. And instead, I chose this image, which you probably all are familiar with from the film Downfall, which was about Hitler's last moments. And I just took the image and I redrew it as Trump with bullet holes through his hat and so on. And I thought it fit the quote very well.
I'm going to go through a couple of your cartoons, unfortunately, quite quickly to get to one that I'd like to get your feedback on. This actually is something that I think is incredibly powerful, and it shows what editorial artists, or cartoonists and illustrators can do that, frankly, people with the written word can't effectively trigger for many of us. This was a very emotional piece, Steve. I had trouble reading it all in one sitting. But
Yeah.
Steve, do you just want to highlight what this is for folks?
Yeah, through the previous year, 2025, I made it a personal project of mine to draw portraits of those who were disappeared, citizens and non-citizens taken off the streets, innocent people, including some very famous ones, and some obscure ones. But I feel that the artist has the power to cause a pause in the rush of the news and get us to just look at a face and read a story. And I did, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 of these. And I I'm not done, obviously. I still do them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve. And for folks, it shows the range of what's possible with editorial cartooning. And frankly, you know, you're capable of the caricature to exaggerate grotesqueness. With here the billionaires and the oligarchs sampling on little hors d'oeuvres of nibbling on planet Earth,
Yeah. They all have a piece of the pie.
piece of the pie.
Because it all belongs to them, right? The rest of us are, what does Musk call us? Non-character players, which refers to a character in the video game who could be killed very easily and it won't matter.
And this is
This
the
is
one. This is the one I wanted to get to, Steve.
Yeah,
This is those of us who've been involved in direct action in the last few years. I knew I had seen this before,
I know.
and I saw an interview with you. This was the cover of The Nation on
No, it
December
wasn't a cover.
17th,
It wasn't a
2015.
cover.
Oh,
Was
sorry.
it was an interior piece, but it has gotten so much play that it might as well have been a cover. A cover would not have gotten as much attention in print as this has gotten online, which shows you, really where we're at. If you do an effective piece that goes online, it could have an impact far beyond a cover. And many people have downloaded it. I've sent to Judy a link to my Dropbox, so anybody who wants to make a poster of this for No Kings can easily, for free, get a big, fat, high-res file of it. And all three artists, I believe, have sent things to Judy where you can all download. And we need lots of signs next week. And by the way, I'm a marshal, so if you're in New York, look for me. And
So,
I'll
so Steve, thank
and
you
I'll
for that.
make you stop marching. I'll wait for the traffic to go, and I'll be the guy in the green. I'm the guy in the green, the green vest.
That is civic engagement above and beyond, and frankly, what's necessary, what is necessary. And thank you. That
I'm sure everybody here is going to be at a march somewhere, and it's going to be huge. It's going to be
I
fun.
do want to ask you a little bit more about this, Steve, because I think
Yeah,
this highlights something that I think you and Tom share. That I think those of us who are new and people who aren't steeped in the tradition of editorial cartoonists is you folks are somewhat soothsayers. You did this in 2015,
I
right?
did.
There have been conversations going on in the professional historian conversation of is Trump authoritarian or is he a fascist or is it a fascist movement? And obviously that has now borne fruit. That's not even a question, right? But I'm curious what you saw in 2015, and this is that mind's eye that the three of you have, that you blend history, present, and future in your craft in ways that I don't think, frankly, people who write prose as capable as they are can do as fast with such ease. So speak to that if you don't mind.
I really have a hard time understanding how this works. I teach it. I teach illustration, but I can't tell my students just why it works. I can just tell you when it doesn't work, and I can tell you why it doesn't work, but I can't tell you how to get an idea or what makes the most sense. Everything that Trump does and did, and I'm a New Yorker, so I go back a long time from the Central Park Five, is based in on racism and greed uh, for 40 years. There's been no variation.
Right.
So it wasn't a mystery to me, and I think to those who have been paying attention, not just New Yorkers, but anybody paying attention to him, that when he started to gain political power, what the sense was that here comes a severe danger of authoritarianism taking over. Although it looks very clairvoyant now because it's so long ago, it's 11 years ago. But really, um, he's been an open book all the way. And
I think
it's our shame that we didn't read the book.
heard. Thank you for that. I think you're underselling the your vision of being able to see things that maybe not everyone sees. I hear you as a New Yorker on the Trump specifically, but the work that you all do has more of this historical relevance that provides insights that, frankly, people need that sense making that you all provide in a concise and accessible way. And so,
Well,
thank you for that.
thank you.
We're gonna. Sorry, go
Hoping
ahead.
I think we're all shooting for that, you know.
Great. We're going to press pause and now we're going to move on and we're going to talk to Tom tomorrow, our third wonderful panelist. So, Tom, welcome. It is wonderful to have an opportunity to chat with you and share your work with this community and this audience. Yet again, another illustrator, another cartoonist, different styles, similar capacity. And frankly, Tom, I think that's one thing you've been also very forward thinking in is the future aspect. You've embedded the concept of tomorrow and futuristic characters, whether they're aliens describing, imagine aliens seeing what's happening now. You've really used some of the science fiction to stretch the context that people can understand the moment. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So for those who are unfamiliar with Tom and his work, Tom has an incredible comic strip that's been running for 25 plus years. I remember reading it, I think, in New York Press. If
More
I
like 35.
Okay, time flies.
Uh, uh,
It is a fantastic. It's another approach towards the cartoon. Tom is also he was the 2013. He won his her block before the other two. I don't know how you guys uh,
I'm so sorry.
brag about these sorts of things, or if you do, I know you're all on the same team. But once again, incredible work and incredible body of work. And your work appears in slightly different outlets. I see it described as alt weeklies. Maybe why don't you describe your audience and how, besides you've over years have built your own audience independently, but just curious, kind of how you describe what alt weekly might mean to the folks on the call tonight.
Yeah, well, my work started out in the papers like the Village Voice and the alternative weeklies. There was once upon a time every city had one. A lot of them have died now. and I have just figured out different ways to keep going. But I never had a job doing this. I've always been sort of hustling. So when that industry collapsed, it just meant I had to figure out a different hustle, several different hustles. Direct reader support is a huge part of it.
Great. And
And
to that end, you did a crowdfunding campaign you have an incredible body of work, and you brought it into fruition in book form, and you were able to crowdsource these books, which is a really cool concept to kind of navigate the economics and the realities of being a cartoonist.
well, I've done that twice. I did that about 10 years ago with a gigantic career retrospective, and it's been about 5 years since I put out a compilation, and I was having trouble finding a publisher, so I did it this year, and it was very successful. And now we're basically trying to wrap up the campaign and be done with it.
So Sam, I'm
It's a
going to
big book.
share.
It's this book right here. It's huge. It's that many cartoons. This thing weighs like 3 pounds.
We're definitely going to, and we want all attendees to support all three of you, to find you on socials, and I think I know for a fact all three of you have compilations and books of your work, and we definitely think it's a worthwhile endeavor, both to support, but also to learn more. And once again, considering tonight as a beginning of a self-study, if you're not familiar with editorial cartoonists, our three guests this evening, and the subject matter. Their books and their websites and their blogs are really something that's going to be one of the, spoiler alert, that'll be one of the actions for every attendee tonight, is to make sure that they sign up and follow all three of our panelists on their socials and support their work. Tom, I want to go through a panel just to show people who may not be familiar with your work. You sent us several, and your work has a little more
I
text.
know, and I apologize. They're very wordy. They're too wordy for this format.
No, 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 no. Don't apologize. I think it's excellent opportunity for people to see that you all three approach this moment completely differently. And I think your multiple panel style, I actually have been thinking about your cartoons, and as much as it may be daunting to sit at a blank screen for either Anne or Steve, I think knowing you have to fill 9 panels and somehow get from A to number 1 to 9 in some sort of cohesive message, I sympathize. I don't know if you want to speak to that directly, but in some ways, I'd rather just have 1 panel than try and fill 9.
Yeah, I mean, this is just how my brain works, and this is what works for me. So,
I
um,
don't know if it's legible for folks. Did you want to just go through this one? I thought this was one in particular because I thought it speaks to, you've created a format that kind of takes people on a story. And so I actually broke it up into individual panels so potentially people could see kind of how the storyline goes.
sure. Do you want me to narrate it?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I don't do voices, so I'm not going to do a Trump voice here. But one, Trump makes a pronouncement that is both troubling and incomprehensible. We're going to get rid of the entire healthcare system and replace it with something better, a pouch of magical herbs and spices you can wear on your belt with a string. It's a very old-fashioned word, pouch. It means a bag with things in it. Mike Johnson doesn't know anything about it. Sir, do you have any comment on? No, I haven't seen the story or the tweet or the video or the leaked Epstein files exposing the president's true depravity or whatever it is. I know nothing. JD Vance, who I always portray in a bellhop uniform for reasons that I'm actually kind of hard pressed to even explain, except that it just instinctively seemed right. And then I decided I was going to drive that joke into the ground. So that's how he appears every time. JD Vance somehow makes it even weirder. White Americans have a long and storied tradition of tying pouches to their belts. The president simply wants to restore a common heritage unsullied by lesser cultures, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. The right-wing propaganda machine tries to retcon his remarks. So, and that's, oh God, what's his name? I'm blanking.
Waters.
Waters.
Jesse Waters, right?
The APM Fox guy, yes.
Yeah.
So, sir, you mean pouch is a metaphor for the thank you, Steve, for that save. So, sir, you mean pouch as a metaphor for the ever-present security of a health savings account, right? No, I mean a little leather bag tied to your belt. It was Bobby's idea. He does his own research. Caroline Levitt yells at the press corps, why can't the lying liberal fake news media ever report the truth about the president's innovative new approach to healthcare? If it were up to me, I'd have you all shot like the vermin you are, except for our friends, the right wing influencers, of course. Trump makes another bizarre pronouncement. We're going to deport all left handed people. I don't want them in this country. You can't trust a southpaw, many people are saying. Southpaw. Southpaw. It's a very old fashioned word. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And 7 cycle repeats on daily, if not hourly basis.
I mean, incredible. I just, as you were reading that, I think you folks, if you aren't already, should have story time because I think people would totally pay to have you read these cartoons. I think it's very satisfying, even though you don't do voices. So just wanted to, it's a great opportunity, Tom, to kind of hear your approach. We can see as consumers and enjoyers of all three of your crafts, this takes a different approach. I think you do one of these once a week. Is that right? So you do have
Right.
some time. But you obviously have an anthology of this, and once again, people can go on your website and you have a character named Sparky and an entire kind of infrastructure related to some of the work that you've done over the years. So where was the origin story of Sparky, the mascot slash icon that you've got on your work?
The cartoon, when I started out very long time ago, when I was a wee lad, it was mostly, I was speaking through several layers of irony. Um, Everyone was talking about how great something is. I was trying to portray how terrible things were through the voices of politicians talking about how great they were. And I just wanted a character who kind of looked like he had wandered in from some entirely different comic strip and could speak more directly to the audience and serve as a stand-in for me.
That's a great story. And then in terms of you've incorporated a little more science fiction over the years, and you're one of the things that I've seen in the through line over the years is your emphasis on surveillance state and technology, and that's kind of something you've been sounding the alarm to some extent. It seems like you've been made, just like Steve was saying earlier, the three of you have been made for this moment as editorial cartoonists, and can you just speak to your more science fiction background or your approach using that strategy?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of mixing it up. So sometimes I have some recurrent aliens that I use, some different science fiction motifs, but it's not, yeah, I mean, yes, I've been talking about surveillance tech for a long time, things like that, but you were, I wouldn't say that I was seeing anything. I'm not predicting anything. I'm not seeing anything that anyone else can't see. I just spend a lot of time reading the newspaper and thinking about how these things come together or might come together.
I think that's something that, frankly, I know I was guilty of, and I'm sure others. I think not fully appreciating the insight and the ways that editorial cartoonists can capture and provide that context and provide those insights in a way that the written editors or op-eds or other folks have done over the years. I'm sure you've seen that, but it's been wonderful to explore all three of your bodies of work to better understand it, and hoping folks actually use this as an opportunity to find your work, but also others.
Well, absolutely. And I would just, my last thing I would say is humor and mockery are really brilliant tools. They can really, the thing that undermines fascists is laughing at them.
Well said. And now that we've briefly had a chance to talk to the three of you, now we're going to cover a couple of subjects with a little more in depth, and this is one where we'll do it our best to can so we can cover all three of the subjects. The first subject we're going to cover is actually press freedom and how it's impacted you, threats whether you've seen directly or what you see on the horizon, your pulse of what's happening and press freedom. I think well, we started originally with Anne. I'm going to do this in reverse order. So maybe Steve, do you want to speak to press freedom? And for those who haven't seen Anne's incredible cartoon, this is gospel. We use this in a lot of our slide decks for people who are understanding the moment. This says editorial cartoonists are canaries in a coal mine. This was a part of a larger piece that Anne did on press freedom. This is just one panel. But so if you see a country without editorial cartoonists or where they are not creating tough, pointed satire against politicians and policies. Be aware, a silenced cartoonist is an indicator of an unhealthy environment for freedom of expression. Editorial cartoonists are democracy's canary in a coal mine. And thank you for capturing that. That's super concise and frames this panel discussion. So, Steve, do you want to speak to press freedom or what ends
Yeah,
cartoon triggers for you?
first I just want to shout out to Anne because she has been not just a great visual artist in advocacy of artist rights, but she's also an activist. She's been on the cartoonist rights. What is it? CRNI,
CRNI,
Cartoonists Rights. What was it?
International.
International. And so she's also, I think, Patrick has been involved in that, Chapet, and
That's freedom. Yeah, that's Freedom Cartoonist. That's a Geneva
that's a
based.
Geneva based.
Yeah,
And
they
that's a
basically every other year they give an award, Courage in Cartooning, and they alternate. So this year it'll be in Geneva, and they give it to a cartoonist that has shown courage and
in the face of authoritarianism and oppression. And also Matt Worker, I think, has been very instrumental. Anyway, as the press generally is under greater and greater threat, so are we. I don't think we are at the top of the pecking order, but I'm on the Upper West Side. I'm 7 stories up, so the ICE agents would have to climb up 7 stories outside this building. And this is a kind of a tough neighborhood. I wouldn't advise them to do it. But I really feel a growing sense of danger for some of us or many of us. Um, and there's just no choice. What are the choices? To remain silent, to stop working, to accede to this, as I said earlier, crumbling, failing, quickly deteriorating regime, um, or to fight them. And I think we're fighting them really well, I have to say. The resistance is really strong. That's us. That's the people who go down to the courthouse and and help the immigrants who are trying to get a hearing. It's the people of Minneapolis. It's the people in front of the Tesla dealerships. It's the people who boycotted ABC and Disney. I'll shut up, Milo. I see you want me to
It's
stop.
not a shut up. I want to hear more from you and I want to hear from our other panelists, but there's so much more. I'd love to put like 2 hours more on the clock, which I know we can't do. So
Okay,
please finish the thought and then we'll move on.
I'm just saying it. We have to be brave, and please notice it's paying off. That's all I need to say.
Great.
Let me just real quickly, the piece
Please.
that you showed was part of a longer piece that I did in 2019. And it basically, I really did it because I was part of a group of no other cartoonists, but journalists, diplomats, whatever. And I was trying to explain to them what an editorial cartoon was. So that's what that long piece is. So I want to just get back about, what kind of danger we're in. I mean, we do have our First Amendment rights. And when I spoke overseas before, I would always say, unlike our colleagues overseas who do not have that, we have our First Amendment rights. However, we have already seen the attacks on the free press, and we are part of journalism. We've also seen attacks on satire, with the Jimmy Kimmels, with the Colberts, and we are also under that umbrella of satire. So I think we're still, as Steve was saying, nobody really at this point feels maybe threatened physically, but you know what? They don't have to do that because they're basically taking away all our jobs, as we have seen with Kimmel, as we have seen with Colbert, is that they're just pressuring these owners of these media companies to silence people. So, in a sense, we are under pressure for that. I mean, look at all of us. We're all freelancers. We don't work for any large media company anymore. So I think that we have to be very well aware of that. The other thing I want to bring up real quick is, and I've said this before, and I think it's already happened, is, you know, you should care about people like us and satirists getting silenced because it's not going to be too far down the line that everyone will be silenced. And we've already seen it, with the death of Charlie Kirk. Remember, there were a lot of people, just plain old people, that were posting. Maybe they were tasteless jokes, but they were posting things about him and they were outed and they lost their jobs. These are ordinary Americans. I mean, even the vice president went so far as to say, find out who their employers are. They said something bad about someone that we love. So I think we
That
all should be very concerned about that.
that was the one quick comment that I was going to throw in is that we live in an age where the entire administration, they're Twitter addicts. They are posting it like it is entirely not outside the bounds of imagination that the vice president or even the president of the United States could declare war on any one of us on social media. Like they're that ridiculous. Um, when I was launching the Kickstarter for this book, I was doing this all on my own. I was terrified. The printer, I can say this publicly now, the printer was in Canada. So these books had to make it across the border in a time of maybe tariffs and maybe just somebody at the border just deciding to screw with me. And it was the week Charlie Kirk died that I was supposed to push the button. And it seemed like there was going to be this massive free speech crackdown. And I, was completely stressed out for a week. And then I just thought, screw it. I'm 64 years old. This is the life I chose. Like I am not preemptively surrendering. And I pushed the button and started the thing off and it went fine, but it was very scary.
Amazing. It is, I think everyone hearing these stories and the warnings from these editorial cartoonists, I know we all wonder what is that, what do we do in times of crisis? And it is frightening that the trajectory is that things are not getting better and they'll likely get worse. And I want to specifically ask a question about audience. And you mentioned everyone here is now a freelancer. Back in the golden era of editorial cartoonists, every major newspaper had, I think, a staff, or many of them had staff editorial cartoonists. I think by the latest count, I don't know if anyone would like to guess. Not, I think our panelists probably know. As far as I understand, there are about 30 staff editorial cartoonists left in the country. And when we talk about a dwindling power of press freedom, it obviously this has to do with the collapse in the funding for journalism itself. It has to do with oligarch control of media properties. So just want to highlight to folks on the call this evening that the the platforms where our neighbors and used to get some of these cartoons and insights from editorial cartoonists don't exist. And luckily, through their own skills and capabilities, these three have created a career and a platform. But there's the majority of, where is the next generation of editorial cartoonists going to print their stuff? Are they going to have to claw their way through social media and AI? And we'll talk about the AI in a moment. But I do want to speak to the subject of ownership. And there was an event in 2019 that, from my standpoint, kind of sense was a bit of a bellwether, which was the New York Times in 2019 announced it was no longer going to carry editorial cartoons in its national or international editions. Once the New York Times is basically a trendsetter for other publishers, it has resources. It's actually a publicly traded company. Last I looked at the ticker, the New York Times is a $13 billion publicly traded media company. I use that as context as they are the influential, right now, dominant powerhouse and do not have an in-house editorial cartoonist, though they have a slew of other editorialists. Actually, the latest count, there's 2,300 journalists as of last week at the New York Times, zero in-house editorial cartoonists. Would love to hear a lightning round if we could, because we want to get to actions, which is the meat and potatoes of what we're doing this evening. So, maybe I'll start with Tom. Do you want to speak specifically to the concept of the influence of the New York Times and the decision not to have an editor cartoonist? Do you have feelings or thoughts on that?
Well, there was the 2019 thing. That was the international edition of the Times. The Times itself stopped running their cartoon roundup. Anne or Steve, you would know that was a long time ago, right? Like that was
They have not had a staff political cartoonist in my lifetime.
well, not staff, but they
The
used to
only,
have the week in review in the Sunday New York Times. That was a
yeah,
big deal to get into that, and they
but
stopped doing that.
But more important than
15
that,
years ago.
more important than that, in the 70s, they established op art, the op-ed page, under the direction of Steve Heller and J.C.
Right.
Suarez. And there you saw some of the strongest political commentary by artists in the world. Marshall Arisman, Brad Holland, Sue Coe, and many, many others. And I got in under the wire on that a little bit. But I just want to introduce the idea that this also defines what we do. It is outside the realm of the traditional political cartoon, what Peter Cooper does with World War III Illustrated, what we see on the internet, posters, people like Robbie Canal. In the Nation every day, we have Peter Cooper and Andrea Arroyo and I uh, put up something called Op Art, and Anne has been in this, and I believe Tom has been in this as well. And we have uh, artists from all over the world. We have street art. We have embroidery by uh, people in third world countries and us. And I just think the definition has to be broken open. And and political art has always been there. And I think it's better than ever. We're poorer than ever. Okay. However, the art is spectacular. And and I think we need to recognize that it's not the her block format entirely anymore. I do think that there will be people who are like you. I mean, my God, when I see you guys, I see Lukovich, I see, oh, now I'm going to get in trouble because I can't name everybody. But, you know, there are so many brilliant people who know to just nail that point just with that one gesture. And everybody goes, yes, that's it. That's bullseye. And that's never going away either. I think it's really healthy, but we're doing it for love, not for money.
Thank you, Steve. Andy, do you want to speak to that as well?
No,
Your
I just want to
comments?
reinforce the point that Steve made is, editorial cartooning is not just a single panel anymore. We are expanding. I mean, as Steve, I taught a few classes a couple of years ago, and the class was called Commentary Through Cartoons, but my students were allowed to choose the format, and frankly, every single one of them for their final project chose a long multi-panel format. But they learned what an editorial cartoon is supposed to do, which is to make a point. That is the difference. It's not the format. Does it make a point? And that's what we do.
Thank you. I'm going to touch very briefly on the subject, your creators, your forward thinking about the role of technology and democracy and the subject of AI. AI, as we all know, is not a singular thing, but curious. I'm going to share an image. There are different ways that AI is impacting all aspects of our lives, the roles of in all creators. There's several bootleg websites that basically rip off your craft and make it through some type of iteration. You can see a panel from Omen on the left, and someone's basically, it looks like it was trained on Mad Magazine, is basically stealing and ripping off his art and has an entire website based on his cartoons. That's, I think, an extreme example of AI and kind of its abuse of your craft and your work. And I'm just curious how you've maybe been affected by AI. Has someone done this to your work? And if you have some thoughts you'd like to share on AI, we'll
Let
start
me
with
let
that.
me go off.
Yeah.
It's theft. I'm sorry. AI is theft. I don't care how many prompts you put into it. It's theft. And if you really want to learn how to draw and create, you have to go through the work. I mean, I have a lot of young people talk to me, what do you think about AI? And I'm like, don't do it. You're not going to learn. You're not going to learn how to draw. You're not going to learn how to think. You have to go through your own life experiences in order for your art to become good. AI is just theft. So stop it.
I agree.
All right.
Um, it is a toy. It is a diversion, and it fools people into thinking that it's art. Nobody listening to us tonight is going to buy a ticket to a play written by a robot. Nobody here is going to go to a concert where the music is written by a robot, or read a novel, or read a poem, because as well as it can imitate a human form of expression, it cannot feel. It cannot have a memory. It cannot ever fall in love, have a baby, experience grief. It cannot live. It is dead. And as a result, the art will be dead. In time, the cream will rise, and the people who like mediocrity, and I believe that's the majority of the consumer public, they like mediocrity, they will consume all the free slop they can. And I think people, as we're talking to here tonight, my fellow panelists, will always be in demand by the people who can tell shit from Shinola. And you will always have them. They'll always be here. So just keep creating. None of my kids at SV, I teach a school of visual arts. None of my kids are interested in AI. Not one of them.
Thank you. Thank you.
They're artists.
Thank you for that perspective. We're now going to come to our final subject matter, which is activism. Well, we put this panel together not just to hear and celebrate and uplift this incredible work and become more familiar, but we want to do. We want to do more than vote, and we want to amplify and support editorial cartoonists, illustrators. So I'm going to start with a couple of images. This We'll credit Anne. Anne gave a press freedom talk. I think she gave, actually in 2025, if not mistaken. Anne, you gave the guest lecture for the 2025 a press freedom award in the Netherlands. I don't know where they gave these tote bags and who gets credit, or if you get credit for the phrase.
Yeah, no, it's not me. I didn't come up with it. This is it was given to me by a cartoonist there. They have I think it's a European editorial cartooning award that they give these bags out. But yes, that was a gift. I did not come up with that, but I proudly carried it through customs coming back and made sure everyone saw it.
So we think for all attendees, the goal and takeaways from tonight, besides following these incredible panelists, supporting their work, investing in their work, and spreading their creations, and we'll come to some specifics, this should be the takeaway from tonight. And if there was a subhead to drawing the line, it is a political cartoon a day keeps the tyrants away. So some of the actions that we're recommending people on the call do. We can do things. We have agency, we have power, we have social networks, we influence those around us. So the actions that we're asking for people joining us this evening, number one, add Anne, Steve, and Tom, and find one other who isn't here tonight of these editorial cartoonists or illustrators, and add them to your your network of your information diet, and also your social network. If you're in a community or you share emails with people, start sharing this work specifically and with intention. You can be a patron, you can buy their books, you can find others. It's actually, I think we said it, someone said it earlier on the call, there's joy also in the work that you do as creators. You bring us joy. Like, there is a national trauma, there are individual traumas of what we're going through, but your humor, it's not just satire, and you also make us feel human, and it is wonderful to have this in your inbox. I do look forward to seeing your emails when you do release something new, as opposed to the latest catastrophic world event. It is wonderful to see the takes from the three of you and from in the inbox. So there is no, don't forget, there's a bit of selfishness as well. If you want something to look forward to in your inbox, it's not all bad news. It's wonderful creations from these three. Once a week, another action. We're an activist org. Once a week, designate some time that you're actually going to spread the word and proselytize, spread the work of editorial cartoonists. These folks are all on social media. And so you can actually follow them and maybe devote that half hour a week that you're sitting there, that you're just following what their latest posts are and sharing it with your social networks. Designate some time. And then also, there are still some editorial cartoonists who do have a staff position at these newspapers. And if your newspaper does carry editorial cartoonists, thank them. And one thing when sharing these editorial cartoons, do your best to tag the artists, or at least name them. And sometimes it's great, the three of you, it's possible to identify your signatures and it's somewhat clear. And then lastly, there have been many mentions of the upcoming First Amendment demonstration called No Kings. These three creators have generously offered to share their work with you, with us. And we consider this a celebration of the First Amendment, your First Amendment rights. And we specifically have marched, at least in our New York City contingent, and there'll be several around the country this year as the Media Democracy Project, specifically for press freedom. People are going for no kings, but how about advocating for press freedom and First Amendment rights? So signing up and engaging your community in support of cartoonists and press freedom. I came across this. Tom, you
Oh
might
my God.
recognize this. Uh,
Yeah, that's going back.
That's going back, but whoever did that was ahead of their time because now they're the illuminators and other activists are doing projections all over DC and the country of Trump-related images. But this was
Yeah.
someone did this. This is W and Dick Cheney. I don't know if you remember the story of this. I don't want to put you on the spot, but this is
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
is
That
now
was
we call this guerrilla messaging, and somebody did a great guerrilla messaging
well,
in one of your cartoons.
it was a guerrilla advertising campaign by Working Assets, the left wing phone company. So I provided them a template, and then people came up with the dialogue and would submit it on Twitter, and then they would project it. That's projected onto the Castro Theater in San Francisco. And sadly, I wasn't there in person to see it, but yeah, even just the photo of it, it was a remarkable thing to see.
Nice. And you've offered up some images if people want to print these out. And Anne has offered some of her images and on her blog after the last Snow Kings, people submitted some of her art in the streets. I'm pretty sure I know Anne is a big fan of some of the work of Banksy and thinking of people beginning to take, you're talking about Steve, people putting art in political commentary and some of these cartoons or images and being creative and thinking of other ways to get this work in other people's faces. There's a global book, just recently specific report on journalists and cartoonists specifically under siege around the world. So there's a link to this report. This was Cartoonist Rights, Freedom Cartoonists, and international organizations summarizing. And these are some of the cartoonists that don't have First Amendment rights are actually around the world highlighted in this. And then before I turn the mic over to you all about what we should be doing, I think this is a great Mike Lukovich, which summarizes what we're all doing here about democracy under siege, as this is a panel with Lady Liberty at the front, waving the American flag. On her left are cartoonists with a giant pointed ink pen. There are everyday Americans, and there are also late night hosts and uncowed journalists. So we'll spend a few minutes before we close, but would love to hear from you. Let's start with you, Tom. Your thoughts on how we, as consumers and enjoyers of your work, can amplify and engage. What actions would you like us or suggest we do?
Are we talking about my work specifically or about cartooning in general?
Oh,
I
your
mean,
work specifically, or we're thinking about actions you'd like people to take. If there are 300 plus people on the call, if you'd like to inspire people to do something that supports the
I mean,
subject matter.
what is that? In general, I think what people really need to do is get out and march and get out and join your neighborhood groups and join like I'm part of a I went to a training. I'm part of an Ice Watch group for my neighborhood. It hasn't come up yet, but like I'm on the phone. I'm on the listserv. Like I just we have to be ready for these things. And I think that's the important thing. Now, for cartooning in general, you've kind of gone over a lot of it. My livelihood now basically depends on direct reader support. I would really encourage people to sign up for my subscription newsletter if you want to keep seeing these cartoons. And I think that's true for everyone. Like, the newspapers are not like we are outliving the newspapers. The media is collapsing. We are kind of on our own, and we need the readers to support us, and they will. I was talking to a friend, a cartoonist, and trying to explain that you just have to trust the audience. It's like doing a stage dive. It's our version of a stage dive. You have to trust the audience to catch you, and they will.
Thank you. Anne, would you like to both give overall advice or counsel, and then also specifically about what can we do to support editorial cartoonists and press freedom, or whatever you'd like us
Sure.
to
Yeah, no, I think obviously the protests, I think it's great when people go out, speak up. I mean, I find it invigorating just to see them, to participate. I mean, it's great. Keep doing that. I want people to critically read the news. This is one thing I was really stressing to my students that they need to do that. It's not just young people that are not doing that, it's older people. Critically read the news and please keep an eye on the midterms. That's going to be the test because this guy is not going to want to lose because he knows that if he loses the House and the Senate, he's in big trouble. And he has gone so far to say stuff like that. If you watched any of the C-SPAN events where he's talking to the GOP, he's getting panicky. So please watch the midterms.
and then in terms of Tom made the point of supporting your work and people subscribing to
Oh,
your work and amplifying.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that, the new platforms are big for us. There's a lot of people on Substack. I also think it is important to actually to still contact editors and tell them, where's your editorial cartoonist? Why did you get rid of them? Because
Yeah.
I can tell you, editors are, most of them don't even know what the hell we do. So you need to speak up. I actually just read, I get Google alerts about editorial cartoonists. And somebody actually wrote in a letter to the editor saying, why did you get rid of the cartoons? We need them, and explained why. And it wasn't one of my colleagues because I didn't recognize the name. It was just a reader. And this is what we need to do. You need to contact those editors and you need to support them on different platforms. But I mean, we want to support you too. I mean, this is why we're giving you these images. Steve was a leader in this. When I saw that he was offering his readers that, I thought, sure, I'll do that. And my readers love it. They love to take the cartoons. I try to help them which ones might work a little better on the posters. But yeah, it's get out there. It's part of our democracy. As simple as that.
Wonderful. So thank you for that. It's inspiring. So Steve, do you want to close out the session? We're going to end with a summary from
I don't,
our
I
hosts
don't,
this evening.
I don't know what I can add. Everybody was perfect. Just one action a day. How's that? One action a day. I end my Substacks usually with a batch of actions to take. I'm very fond of Jessica Craven. If anybody doesn't subscribe to her, please do on Substack, because she'll give you more than you could possibly, your brain could possibly hold. But please don't get overwhelmed because it is a fire hose that, Steve Bannon's theory of surround the, what is he,
Flood the zone.
flood the zone with shit. They've
Yeah.
done it. They're very successful at it. Choose one thing. Today, the war. Tomorrow, ICE. Send one letter to someone. And then postcards. So many organizations are doing postcards. You have no idea how effective that is. When a voter gets a handwritten note from you telling you to support a candidate and why, it makes a huge difference. It suddenly becomes real to them. There's all these things we can do, and please come out on the 28th. It's going to be the biggest thing that ever happened, and you're going to really love having been a part of it, and you're going to make some friends, and you will actually know that what you're doing is not just a passive action. What happens, what the head of Indivisible said, that whenever they have a big turnout in a town, the level of registration goes up. So it's a practical solution to this. And the elections we've had so far have borne this out. It's going to be a
And it,
very big anti-Trump year. And just stay the course.
and it matters because the media won't always emphasize the fact that basically a vast majority of the country hates Trump, but you cannot deny these images of the largest rallies in human history taking place. You just cannot deny this.
You have to make this so big that they can't ignore
Yeah.
it. And then the vote has to be so big, so lopsided that they can't challenge it. That's another big thing. The close elections they love. They love to, play with numbers. But if it's a landslide, it shuts them down. So that's what we need. And we can actually save this democracy to a certain extent, anyway.
Well, I'm gonna my portion of the session of this evening is coming to a close. I'll just say personally, thank you to all three of you. You're inspiring. You give us hope. You keep us sane. I had a hypothesis that it is impossible to sane wash an editorial cartoon. I don't think we have a chance to get in that, but I think you do incredible work, and thank you. I'm going to now turn the mic over to one of I think our host, Lisa, this evening, to close the event. And thank you to the entire audience for people to tune in and caring and being here and doing more than vote and building and advocating a healthier media environment for Americans. Thank you.
Thank you, Milo, and thank you to everyone. I'm Ellen Bender, actually subbing for Lisa, one of the leaders of Markers for Democracy. We're one of the organizations who co-hosted. We happen to write a lot of postcards. If you're interested in doing that, I hope that you will join us. Thank you again to our stellar panel of cartoonists and Telnaes, Steve Brodner and Tom Tomorrow. As Milo said, please add them to your media diet if you don't follow them already. Thank you to Milo Vassallo, our moderator, and very obvious fan of political cartoonists, for moderating, and to all of our co-hosting organizations, Markers for Democracy, Media and Democracy Project, Downtown Nasty Women's Social Group, Team Min, Seniors Taking Action, and the Wednesday Group. We're all volunteer groups who host events like this out of our love for democracy. Particular thanks to the volunteers who've been working on this event for weeks to ensure that it ran smoothly, and you can tell who they are by their event-specific Zoom backgrounds. Click on the link in the chat or use the QR code, which I hope is still on the screen, for a document with a list of the panelists, co-hosts, and cartoonist organizations, and all the ways you can follow us. And don't worry, if you haven't been able to click on the link, we are going to send out an email with the links, the slides, a recording of the event in a few days. Give us a little time to organize it. And once again, follow our panelists and other cartoonists and support their work. Join our organization, subscribe to our newsletters for more events, and please join us or join a No Kings event near you on next Saturday, March 28th. And think about carrying a sign with a political cartoon. Thanks again for joining us, and good night.